Hi everyone, welcome to Bikini Design Club. On today's short video, I will be demonstrating how you can add fullness to your bust dart. So as a starting point, we are going to be using our swimsuit pattern Maria on a size 8. Our sizes are drafted for a C-cup pattern. And today I'm going to be changing this pattern so that I have more depth on my darts. So I'm going to make a bust adjustment so that it fits my mother's bust. She's a size 8 on the rest of the swimsuit. However, I need to adjust the bust dart area. And so we have the bust point here on the pattern. And we need to mark the apex, which is further away from the bust point in this pattern, 2 centimeters. So if I draw a line from the seam allowance to my bust point and I measure 2 centimeters, I will find my apex on this pattern. Okay, so this is the apex on my pattern here. And now I'm gonna draw a line perpendicular to the fold line going through here. I'm gonna draw another one going to the apex to 1/3 of my sleeve, of my underarm edge, which, you know, if you measure more or less, you don't need to be very accurate. If you measure more or less, it will be more or less here. And I will also do a line parallel to the grain line, to the fold line coming down. But to start, I have my waistline and I'm gonna cut my pattern on my waistline because the changes that we are gonna do is for the full bust adjustment, which will be on the top part. So I'm gonna separate the top part of the swimsuit from the bottom. And to do so, I'm just going to do a line going over my waist area and I'm gonna cut my pattern there. Now let's draw a line parallel to our, perpendicular to our grain line, to our fold line, the front, which would be here. Another one for our under the arm seam, which would be here. And another one coming parallel to the grain line, all the way down to the waist. Now grab your paper scissors. I'm sure you have noticed that for most pattern alterations, we remove the seam allowance, we do the alterations, and then we add the seam allowance. However, on this pattern, we don't need to do it, and to do the full bust adjustment, we don't need to do that. So I'm gonna start by cutting this one here, all the way through until my apex. And I'm gonna keep cutting through here until let me just put a little bit of tape here. I'm gonna cut all the way through here until I reach the seam allowance, and then I'm gonna stop and leave a little bit of paper uncut, and I'm gonna cut from the opposite side again, just leaving a little bit of paper without cutting so that we have a pivot point. Now I'm gonna cut this one here all the way through until I reach my apex. That's it. Now this part here, what we want to do is pivot this side here until I need to cut this a little bit more. Even if you cut through, it's not a problem, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place the line here from the center front, and I'm gonna tape this to the table so it doesn't move. And I'm also going to tape this part here, so this part here stays stable. And now the only part that is going to move is this one, okay? And I'm gonna grab a piece of paper, of white paper, to put underneath, because we will need to have a new placement here for our dart. We still need to cut through this line here, which would be the center of our dart. Don't cut through the paper, leave a little bit in the end there. Well, mine had I need to staple this here, wait, because I use my paper pattern was sticked together. So besides cutting this small bit here and cutting to your seam allowance and from the seam allowance there, but leaving a small bit, we also need to cut this line here on the center of our dart. When you cut it, cut until you are almost on the edge of your paper, but not through it, okay? So that it has a small connection there, as you can see, okay? And now grab a piece of paper so that we can lay underneath this and get our new pattern. So my original pattern is here, and I have a piece of paper underneath, which I can turn vertically, which would be much easier. I'm just gonna draw a line so that my original pattern has references, and I'm gonna draw a vertical line and also a perpendicular line to that one, so that I can now get my pattern and place it here, just so I know that it is square and perfect. And I taped this down to my paper. And now I have this part very stable and this part moving around, as you can see. And now, to give you the bust fullness that you want, you will have to have a distance that will be between this here and the new bust apex. And to do this, what I do is I'm gonna grab my ruler again. I'm gonna do, just as a reference, my original vertical line through the apex, which would be here. And now for my mother, I know that I need to add 2.5 centimeters, so a full inch, 2.5 centimeters. Yeah, I think it's an inch, yeah. At 2.5 centimeters, so I'm gonna go here, 2.5 centimeters, and I draw a parallel line, 2.5 centimeters from this one here. And now I just grab this and I align the original pattern on this line, vertically, of course. And I can grab this and staple this in place. I'm gonna tape this, and this is the new bust dart increased fullness that I did for my mother. Of course, now here you have this chunk here, which is not great. So of course you need to redraft a smooth curve here, which is very easy. You can do it just by looking and redrafting a smooth curve, and it will be your new seam allowance. So that's easy. You now have the bust dart a lot more with a huge opening, which you didn't have before. And of course, you have to redraft your seam allowances again. But let me show you. First of all, we are gonna grab a little bit of paper. I'm gonna put the paper here because I need to still have places where I can draft my pattern again. So if I would go and draw a line from my pattern from one edge to the other of my dart, I can then measure and see that I have 7 centimeters, so half of that is 3.5, and I can go on my apex to my center, and this is just for me to be able to move again the bust point away from the apex, so 2 centimeters, just like we had before, remember? And now when we would have the new darts here, which would be from here to here. This is the new original pattern, okay, this one, and of course this one. And now of course we need to draw the seam allowances. Usually my darts are slightly curved on the inside of the darts, like so and like so. They are slightly curved. So if you see the pattern, you will see that this line of the seam allowance is also curved, because of course it's parallel to this one. So it's easier for me to do it on my computer, but by hand it's a little bit harder. You can use a curve if you have and try to do it, because what we need to do is of course match the two sides of the dart, right? You need to have the same size. So of course if I do this one here, I'm gonna do the same on this side, and of course now I'm gonna have my seam allowance. So this is where I'm gonna cut the new dart, okay, until I reach here. And now the depth that we added, it's a lot. We already sorted out that over there, and we already sorted out this inside here of the dart. Now we need to solve what we do on the bottom part here. So I cut it through this line here because we are now going to lower this here. So imagine that I do like a perpendicular line going to my waist. I just need to, and I do this one here also, of course, just so that I'm sure that my paper is still on the correct position. And I align the paper on the waistline and on this line here, and of course here. I get a little bit of tape. I put it in place. And now the fullness that you have for the bust dart, you also have on the front part. So the top edge of your swimsuit is a little bit higher than it was before. Of course, this means that you will have to grab your back and measure the size that you have on the total from here to here and here to here. And of course, your back top edge will have to also be adjusted so that the seams are matching. That's kind of obvious, right? So that I will leave it up to you, because I think it's simple and you will be able to figure it out. Now, the only thing that I want to share is that when I add my bottom part here, you have this that we don't have here, right? So this is just a matter of a little bit of adjustment. When we do that adjustment, I'm going to give you an example, but this will then depend a little bit on you, because you could simply align it here and redraft this line and redraft the curve here, all right? You can cut here, for instance, which I'm going to do as an example, but this is kind of like, you decide where you prefer to do your adjustment for the lower back. And of course, you can check the waist measurements of your individual. And the waist of my mother is a little bit bigger than the original 8 size. So this is a good alteration. So I'm gonna grab this one. And this one I will align here like if it hadn't been cut before. And this here I'm gonna keep here, where it was before also. So now what we need to do is smoothen this curve, so remake this curve. Again, a little bit of paper underneath, we retrace this and it will be done. Let me show you. And that's it for today, girls. I hope you like to know how to do the full bust adjustment for 𝗙𝗵𝗂 swimsuit. You can also do this on other patterns. And that's it for today, girls. See you soon. Bye.